Nevins. We've been having this award for as long as I can remember, certainly. Many years. 1974 we started it. And it's meant to honor scholarship in the Civil War and service to the Civil War Roundtable community as a whole. We have a distinguished list of honorees, including James McPherson, Ed Bars. Well, just name the person that this name is distinguished source. We've already given the Nevins-Freeman Award. Tonight we're going to give the award to Wayne Motts, a very deserving awardee. Historian, author, flyer, whatever. He runs, among other things, the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I've been there. I know a lot of you have been there. Great place to visit. Beautiful vista from that hill there, too. Almost as good as flying over Chicago and looking at Chicago from the air, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
See, he has 3 nonprofit organizations on his resume, including the Gettysburg Foundation. Authored 2 published works on the Civil War, and certainly a deserving recipient of the Nevins-Freeman Award. So without further ado, I'm going to give you Wayne Motts.
Thank you. Wow, thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Wayne.
I appreciate it. Boy, good evening, everyone, and thank you for that wonderful introduction and the hospitality. And I tell you, I'm just honored to be with you here this evening. I want to thank, from 2 years ago, Dennis, who we spoke to groups of. Some of you have heard me before, and I'm honored to be with you here this evening. I want to thank my longtime friend of many years, Pat Brennan, who's right up front here. Pat took myself, and also I want to recognize my girlfriend Rebecca, right over here, my traveling companion, and he took us and gave us a Civil War sites of Chicago tour that was wonderful. Now, I've been to Chicago, and I know some things about it, but I had a first-rate battlefield guide right there. And so, Pat, thank you so much for all of that, a longtime friend of here. I want to thank Bruce and the Roundtable for coordinating and getting everything here. I would not be here this evening as a recipient of the Nevins-Freeman Award if it was not for a member of this Roundtable. My native place is Columbus, Ohio. That's where I grew up. It's where I was born, 10 miles southeast of the city, a little town called Groveport. And I've been out in Gettysburg now for 38 years. I've been out in Gettysburg longer than my home place. But I know where my roots are. And my father was a professional photographer, and he was in charge of the Professional Photographers of America, a group that was headquartered right here in Des Plaines, Illinois. And he would make many trips here to Des Plaines. And on one of his trips, he was teaching a photography class, and a member of the Roundtable attended it. And he got talking to my father about photography, which he was very interested in, and of course their mutual interest, the American Civil War. And he said, you know, I got a son that's going to Ohio State University, 1985. He just started. He's a freshman there, and he's interested in military history. And the member of the Roundtable said, I will take care of him. I will give him the best Civil War material you could possibly have, courtesy of the Civil War Roundtable, and it was this man right here, Hal Ardell. Some of you know Hal Ardell. Hal Ardell took photography classes from my father. And he said, I'm going to ship cassette tapes to Wayne Motts, and Wayne Motts got to go to Ohio State University listening to the lectures of this Roundtable, where I got a degree in military history. I wouldn't be running these museums. I wouldn't be here at all if it wasn't for the hospitality of Hal and for sending those tapes. So in memory of Hal, I'm going to dedicate this talk tonight about artifacts in the National Civil War Museum. And I've always been interested in artifacts, ladies and gentlemen. My family runs a military museum. My dad retired from photography. Motts Military Museum. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. It's got tanks. It's got planes. It's got helicopters. I took things to show and tell. You'd be in handcuffs today. You'd be locked up. And luckily, I had understanding principals, and people were, I've been interested in artifacts all my life, and I've been around them all my life, and so I'm a museum person, and we're going to talk about Illinois associated artifacts in the National Civil War Museum tonight. Now, we've got thousands of Illinois artifacts in collections all across the United States. Certainly Illinois has got the highest concentration of them, but that doesn't mean that we at the National Civil War Museum don't have things that are fairly significant related to Illinois in the war. Last night I did Wisconsin, so this is prepared just for you, and I picked out only certain items. Wayne, why did you pick out those certain items? Because I'm leading the talk tonight. I get to pick out any items that I want, everybody. Here's some of the collections. We've got about 65,000 square feet at the National Civil War Museum, a terrific collection of 31,000 items, diaries, letters, correspondence, three-dimensional objects. We've got 1,000 of them on display. It's one of the largest museums in the country related to the Civil War. Our sister organization, one that would be very similar in size to us, would be the Museum at Kenosha. Very similar into our size. Our collection, Kenosha's collection, these are our top-rated collections for the Civil War. When you're thinking about where are the best collections of Civil War-related artifacts, National Civil War Museum in Kenosha are going to rank up there. And which ones would we know? The Smithsonian Institution, of course, the National Museum of American History, West Point, and the collection at Gettysburg, and the collection at the American Civil War Museum in Richmond, Virginia. These would be the large collections. In Kenosha, the National Civil War Museum, a huge amount of material. Their focus on the Midwest states. Our focus is a little bit more wider, and we're going to just talk about a few. Now, some of these men that I picked out are transplants to Illinois. Some of them are actually born in the state of Illinois, but they all have Illinois connections. And here's an Illinois clerk that you all know that became the commander-in-chief of armed forces of the United States in the Civil War. Now, I'm an Ohioan, so I don't want to give him to Illinois, right? But I've got to acknowledge that he worked in his father's store as a clerk in Galena, Illinois. I understand that, but he's born actually in 1822 in the state of Ohio near Cincinnati. And my home is near the center of the state. And this is a man, and you know the history of it, I don't have to tell you, but this guy has got a career that no one would have guessed he would have been the leader of all the troops by March of 1864 for the Union forces in the Civil War. This is a man that failed selling firewood. He failed selling insurance. He had to leave the Army under very bad circumstances for drinking. He's not a person you would recognize right away as somebody that's going to lead the armies by the end of the Civil War. I think U.S. Grant's the greatest soldier of the Civil War. I'm often asked by people, who is the greatest soldier of the Civil War? And if I had to pick the number one soldier in the Civil War, I would pick U.S. Grant as an operational commander in the war. I don't think he had an equal to that, in my view. Of course, the Robert E. Lee folks would differ, but once again, I'm giving a talk tonight, so I get to tell you who I think is the person in charge. So Grant had many objects, and there are many objects in many museums associated with Ulysses Simpson Grant in the Civil War. But the National Civil War Museum has a beautiful trunk with his stenciled name right on it. This is his personal trunk that he used in the U.S. regular Army. That is a belt that he also used. You'll notice that says USA. Grant was in the regular Army from his graduation at West Point, which dates to 1843, for 11 years until his resignation in 1854. And so this trunk probably predates the American Civil War. Doesn't mean he didn't have it, carry it, or use it. He would have had multiple trunks in the Civil War. I think about what could that trunk tell us as it traveled around with U.S. Grant and had all these materials in it. So this is a connected Illinois piece to Ulysses Simpson Grant. Now, Grant, probably his most recognized campaign in the Civil War, at least early, is going to be the campaign of Vicksburg. Remember, Vicksburg is a tough nut to crack. Union forces have got to have it, and Ulysses Simpson Grant is going to be given the job to take it. He's going to try multiple ways to get at it, and it's not until the summer of 1863, spring and summer, that he's able to get his army on the same side of the Mississippi River, fight 5 battles, and then invest the city, He'll attack the defenses there twice, but he will have to lay siege to it, and eventually it will surrender. Now, he tries multiple strategies to get at it, and he has to have a diversion to be able to get his army on the same side of the river in the spring and summer of 1863. And he's going to call on a very unlikely cavalry leader who was an Illinois music teacher to help him out. And that man's name is Benjamin Grierson. Grierson is actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was not born in the state of Illinois, born in 1826, but he moves in about 1851 to Jacksonville, Illinois, and he becomes a music teacher. He actually writes songs for the Lincoln campaign. He does not have any military experience, but when the Civil War breaks out, he is going to be given command of a cavalry unit. He'll be Major First of the 6th Illinois Cavalry there. He will marry while he's in Jacksonville. Of course, he'll have some children, and then he'll serve later on in the regular army. But his home is today still standing in Jacksonville, Illinois. It's on the National Historic Register. It is a private home today. And if you go to it, this little rock that's right here on the side actually tells you that Benjamin Grierson lived there. This is the rock right outside of his home. Now, Grant is going to ask him, through Stephen Hurlbut, the commander there, to lead a raid that goes from LaGrange, Tennessee, all the way down to Newton Station, Mississippi, to cut and disrupt the railroad and basically wreak havoc behind Confederate lines while Grant is moving to get his army in position on the same side of the river as Vicksburg. This is what Grierson's raid looks like. It becomes the most famous raid, probably the most famous raid of the American Civil War. It lasts 16 days, and this Illinois music teacher without military experience, a man who was kicked in the head by a horse, who doesn't like horses when he was a young child, is going to lead this raid. And it will start way up here in LaGrange, Tennessee. It'll penetrate very deep down into Mississippi, and it will come down here and cut the railroad supply that goes over to Vicksburg. Now, this raid will leave on April 17, 1863 from LaGrange, Tennessee. It will have 3 regiments of cavalry, the 6th and 7th Illinois Cavalry and the 2nd Iowa Cavalry Regiment. All 3 of those will be part of this, and Grierson will be commanding about 1,700 troopers. And the first day they go out, the first day that they're on the march, they will do 30 miles. So imagine the distances. It's going to be 300 miles down to Newton Station, 300 miles down to here from LaGrange, and then another 300 miles down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The Union forces figure, Grierson figures that if he's raiding this deep into the Confederacy, it's probably not good for him to turn around and go back to LaGrange because everybody knows where he is. So instead of going 300 miles turned around, he's going to go 300 miles deeper into Confederate territory and end up going into the Union defenses of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. A terrific feat in the Civil War, 600 miles in about 16 days. And his losses were 3 dead and 17 wounded. 3 dead and 17 wounded out of 1,700 men. Think about that, about what he's able to accomplish. Now, he'll have sick troopers that will be left with the clemency of the enemy because he can't take anybody with him. And if you've ever seen the movie Horse Soldiers with John Wayne and William Moulton, this is where it comes from. The idea of that, so John Wayne's character would be the character of Benjamin Grierson. That's basically who he's trying to portray. Well, once Grierson gets into the line of Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge commander welcomes him. And that commander is Union General Christopher C. Auger. And at the National Civil War Museum is a presentation pistol that belonged from Christopher Auger, given as a gift to Benjamin Grierson. Now, you can't see the plate, but it says, "For a task well executed, thanks to a friend of old, Benjamin Grierson, from Christopher C. Auger, for a task well executed, is what it says. And that is for this raid. This is a special pistol bought by Christopher C. Auger with his own money as the defense commander of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and given as a gift to Benjamin Grierson. This is what it looks like. Terrific model 1849 pocket revolver. And it's inscribed B.H. Grierson right down here at the bottom. So this is not something government came up with. This is something that Auger thought so much that he would order it and then have it shipped and given over to Benjamin Grierson. Now, Grierson has a terrific career because when the Civil War ends, and he becomes very famous overnight, almost in the papers, he has a very hard time trying to deal, actually, with his fame. But when the Civil War is over, he will decide to stay in the Army, and he will get a commission as colonel of the 10th United States Cavalry Regiment of the Buffalo Soldiers. He will command an all-black regiment of cavalry, and he will be in the United States service for 29 years, from 1861 until 1890, and he will die in 1911, and he is buried right here in Illinois. He's in the Jacksonville Cemetery. His entire home, while he was in the U.S. Regular Army, from 1861 to 1890, is still, his permanent home was in Jacksonville, Illinois. So he considered himself an Illinoisan, and he's buried here, right here in Illinois. And Grant is not able to get on the side of the river of Vicksburg if it wasn't for Benjamin Grierson. And he makes that play in the spring and early summer of 1863. At the same time, what's going on in Pennsylvania? The Gettysburg Campaign, right? The Gettysburg Campaign. So let's talk about another famous Illinoisan, it was just mentioned here in this room, and that's going to be General John Buford. Now, John Buford is born in the state of Kentucky, right? Woodford County, Kentucky is where he's born in 1826, but he's actually reared in Rock Island, Illinois. And he moves to Illinois, his father does, after his father, who is a widower, comes to Illinois after the death of John Buford's mother. And that would have been around 1834. And then General Buford will go to West Point in 1844. So he's about 6 years old when his mother dies, and then he spends 10 years basically in the state of Illinois before he is shipped off to go up to West Point, where he is a graduate in the class of 1848. He goes out on the western frontier, and when the Civil War starts, after he's had a career here for so many years, about 13 years, then he's going to have to make a choice. And he is in Utah at the outbreak of the American Civil War. He gets a letter from the governor of Kentucky, and he asks, Governor of Kentucky wants him to serve in the Confederacy. And he basically decides that I'm going to remain a captain in the United States Army, and I'm going to continue to serve as a U.S. volunteer soldier. He had been in the mounted service his whole career, and he's going to lead the mounted troops' entrance into the Battle of Gettysburg on July 1st, 1863. His troops arrive at about 11 a.m. on the 30th of June, the day before the Battle of Gettysburg. And if you're John Buford and you come into the Battle of Gettysburg and you've got 2,900 troopers, including the 8th Illinois Cavalry, the first thing you got to do, ladies and gentlemen, is close the bars. You got to make sure people aren't drinking. And this is an original order. There's only 3 of these orders that are known to exist, and the National Civil War Museum has one of them. The first thing John Buford did is he went right in the middle of downtown Gettysburg. He walked right across the street to the square, and he went into the newspaper office of the Gettysburg Star, right there, be the one of the 3 papers that were at Gettysburg, Star and Sentinel, and he says, I want this order printed up. And this would have been posted all over Gettysburg. And not only does it say that you can't sell spirituous liquor, the sale of spirituous liquor of any kind in this town during the occupation of troops is strictly prohibited. Any violation will be promptly and severely punished. The giving away liquor will be published. You can't give it away, nor can you sell it. And so Buford is going to make sure here that the Union soldiers are not going to be drinking the day before the Battle of Gettysburg. And then on July 1st, 1863, with a clear and sober head, the 8th Illinois Cavalry Regiment will fire the first shot of the Battle of Gettysburg west of town, and John Buford will engage with his 2,900 troopers, hold off this force of Henry Heath and the Confederates coming in west of town until Union reinforcements arrive. And then General Buford is sent down to Westminster, Maryland, where his troops are refitted after their engagement. 2,900 troopers. Anybody know how many men Buford lost at Gettysburg? 100. 100 out of 2,900. Not very. Whoever saw a dead cavalryman, right? No. Well, actually, his troops did very excellent work, but they're scouting troops. Their job is not to engage the Confederate forces here. So his losses aren't as high as what most people think. He is refitted, and then General Buford will go into the fall, and by the winter of 1863, he is sick. And he actually is on his deathbed in Washington, D.C., when he gets a promotion from Brigadier General to Major General. This promotion actually comes in after John Buford dies. He is told on his deathbed, he dies December 16, 1863, about 5 months after the Battle of Gettysburg. He is told on his deathbed that he will be promoted to Major General of the United States Volunteers. And when he is told that, he reportedly says, "I wish now I could have lived." The National Civil War Museum, there's your first shot marker there, the National Civil War Museum has the original commission, the one copy of the original. Buford would have gotten a copy, or his family would have got a copy. Secretary of War gets a copy, and there's usually a clerk file copies. There's usually 3 of these, signed, hand signed by the Secretary of War. Edwin Stanton hand signed this. This is Edwin Stanton's actual signature here at the bottom of this, and that's Abraham Lincoln's actual signature. And it is for Major Generalcy as of July 1st, and it is signed on the 15th of June, 1864, even though John Buford dies December 16, 1863. We also have a commission that belonged to John Buford when he was in the Dragoons. It's signed in 1853, and it is hand-signed by President Franklin Pierce. And in 1853, guess who else signed John Buford's first lieutenant commission in the National Civil War Museum as Secretary of War? Jefferson Davis. Right. But so the National Civil War Museum has 2 of John Buford's commissions. This is just one of them. What an artifact. And I get to hold that and think, well, you know what? That was signed, and Lincoln signing that, and Edwin Stanton signing it, and you just shake, when you see it. Now, Buford is not buried in Illinois. Born in Kentucky, reared in Rock Island, Illinois. He is actually buried at the United States Military Academy Cemetery at West Point. It's a very large memorial there. And anybody know who's right next to John Buford right there? Who? You know who it is?
No, I said Custer.
Not Custer. That's a good guess, though, Dennis. But Custer, if you're famous at West Point, you're sort of under a tree. So Winfield Scott's under a tree, Custer's under a tree. You go up there and look under a tree. That is the grave right there, right next to Buford, of Alonzo Cushing. Alonzo Cushing. Cushing is buried almost identical. And, of course, where was Cushing born? We talked about him last night. Wisconsin. He was born in Delafield, Wisconsin. We talked about him last night on that. So John Buford, ladies and gentlemen, is, goes into Gettysburg and holds this line and is a major part of this victory. Now, the victory at Gettysburg is ending July 3rd, right? We just talked about the Grierson raid. Grierson is raiding from April 17 up to about May 2nd. And now Ulysses Simpson Grant has to land his army south of Vicksburg, get it across the river, fight 5 battles. And part of that operation will be an Illinoisan, there are several of them, but we're going to profile one today, that received the Congressional Medal of Honor. And his name is James D. Vernay. And Vernay is an Illinois man, born in the state of Illinois. He is from Marshall County, Illinois. And am I going to say it right? Lacon, L-A-C-O-N. Anybody know how to say that? Marshall County, Illinois is where he is from. Lakin. Is that how you say it? Okay, there you go. Now we've got the right folks in here. Don't let an Ohioan come up and make that pronunciation, right? Right. He's born, Vernay is actually born, and this is a great image of him right here from the Civil War. He's born December 24th, 1834, and he is born in Marshall County, so he is a native of the state of Illinois. His father and mother were farmers, and they are listed on the census in 1850, as he is, as a young child, working in a farm. In 1860, he is listed as a farmer in the same place, Marshall County, Illinois. This is his native place. And in 1861, he will join Company B of the 11th Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment. And in this Vicksburg campaign, and boy, that focus of that is just not very good. Let's see if I can get it a little better. Here we go. Let's try that. The Army is going to land down here at Bruinsburg, right down here at the bottom, and then Grant will fight these 5 battles and then go up against Vicksburg in May of 1863. But to do this, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to land his army south of Vicksburg, Grant has to get the troops and the transports around the city of Vicksburg, around this Big Bend, under terrific artillery fire from the Confederates. You've got to run the gauntlet of the batteries that are along the side of this. James Vernay is assigned to a steamer called the Horizon. So even though he is an infantry soldier, and by this time he is a second lieutenant in the 11th Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment, he will volunteer to serve on the Horizon, and he will be second in command of this Union steamer. It is not an iron gunboat. Several of Grant's ships in this operation, or his boats, were iron gunboats. This is a transport that is transporting a Illinois light artillery battery on board of this. And this man, Vernay, is going to bravely work the guns beyond this while this transport comes down and runs the batteries here in April of 1863. And his action date for the Medal of Honor, the date that he is given the citation, is April 22nd, 1863, right before Grant lands down here when he's running the batteries. That's right here. Vernay gets the Medal of Honor in 1898. So that's pretty long after the American Civil War. And here is a picture of him. This is your Illinois native with the Congressional Medal of Honor right there. That's the 1896 design of the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's the GAR medal right there for James Vernay. This is probably him in about 1900, but he gets the Medal of Honor in 1898. And where is the 1898 Medal of Honor? It's in the National Civil War Museum. So this is it right here, and it's actually inscribed to him by Act of Congress for April 22nd, 1863, for gallant, heroic conduct on the steamer Horizon in the Vicksburg campaign. Now, if you live long enough, you can have multiple designs of the Medal of Honor, depending on when you receive it. In 1904, the Medal of Honor was redesigned. It's called the Gillespie design. That's what we call it today. And it looks very similar to the medal that you and I see today, that somebody is awarded. So if you're James Vernay and you live long enough, you've got an 1898 medal. In 1904, the government will send you the 1904 design Medal of Honor. Now, at the beginning, the government wanted you to send your 1898 medal back to get the 1904. Now, you can imagine what the Medal of Honor recipient said about that, everybody. Most of them said to forget it. They're also a very powerful group of people. There is a letter in the files that we have. It's actually in the Medal of Honor file for Vernay, is that he sends the medal back, and then the government ends up sending this original one back to him. And it's the reason why we've got it in the National Civil War Museum. So apparently these men must have got a hold of their congressman or whoever it was and say, look, we're not we're not going to return those. We need you to make that go away. We need you to fix that. So the government returns the 1898 medal to him, and they give him the 1904 design, brand new medal, because he's not dead yet. And that medal is in the National Civil War Museum. We've actually got both of them right there. So this is the 1904 design James Vernay medal from Vicksburg. And Vernay, this man becomes a very prominent citizen. He actually lives and works down in Washington, D.C., takes a government job after the American Civil War. And then in March of 1918, so he's what, almost 80 years old? March of 1918, he is walking down the street and he is struck by a car. Can you imagine surviving at Vicksburg? And right here it says he's in a state of coma at his home and is believed to be suffering from concussion of the brain, was crossing I Street at B Northwest when he was hit in automatic driven, so it's an automatic car apparently, it says, being driven by this person who is a paymaster at the United States Navy. So it was an accident, but James Vernay, this guy who survived the American Civil War, received his nation's highest military decoration, is struck by a car and killed. And he's actually buried in Arlington National Cemetery right here. But the National Civil War Museum has two of the medals that are his. Now, the best story of the evening I've saved for last. I think it's the best one, although it could be debated. We'll let you all determine that. And that's this man, Waukegan resident William M. Reid. Now, Reid is buried in Waukegan, and I didn't know where he was buried, and so Rebecca and I got off a plane on Wednesday, and we drove right to the cemetery. Went right there to find his grave, because we break for all dead people. If there's a dead person around, we are going to find you. And Reid is like Buford. He is a transplant. So in tonight's presentation, I'm giving you, as I said, some transplants to Illinois, become Illinois residents, some of them who are native Illinoisans. And Reid is one of those that is a transplant. He is actually born in the state of Rhode Island. And he's born on March 11, 1836 in Providence, Rhode Island. His father was Thomas Reid. His mother was Mary Cook Reid. And the two of them came to Waukegan County in probably around 1845 or 1850. By the 1850 census, they are in Illinois. So the early formative years of this young man is going to be in the state of Illinois. He actually attends, now listen, I'm an Ohio State graduate, and I was chagrined to find out he attends the University of Michigan. So he goes to the University of Michigan in 1858. Doesn't look like he graduates from there, but he will enlist in the service. And he will enlist in Company I of the 15th Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment, a very well-known unit that's at Shiloh, among many other places. And we have his entire collection of material. We have all his photographs. We have a 56-page handwritten manuscript that is all in his own hand. It's never been published. So it's got some very interesting materials, including a great eyewitness account of his own participation at the Battle of Shiloh, where this unit lost many men. They went into battle with about 500 men. He claims they came out with about 100. Now, I don't know how many stragglers ended up coming back, but they lost a tremendous amount of soldiers there. He will then be fighting in October of 1863. I don't have enough places to hold everything, at the Battle of Hatchie Bridge, which is part of the Corinth campaign. It's a little-known cavalry action. And we've got his actual reminiscence of it, and I wanted to see if I can get to it here. Let's see if I can get to where it is, where he talks about his action. And he says this: I have a Sharps rifle I captured from the 1st Arkansas Mounted Rifles, and they saw that it was one of the guns. They said that it was one of the guns the good fellows of Boston sent to John Brown during the Kansas War. It was taken from him, sent to the arsenal at Little Rock, Arkansas, and then taken to Vicksburg, where it was put into Confederate service. So in October 1863, he is in a battle against the 1st Arkansas. He takes a Sharps rifle away from one of the Confederates that he says the Confederates said were used by John Brown in Kansas. And guess what? He keeps that rifle, and where is it? In the National Civil War Museum. That's the actual weapon right there. It's been cut down and modified. This has been taken apart. And he goes on to say, in his handwritten manuscript, I have the Sharps rifle I captured. That's this one right here in the collection of the Civil War Museum. Now, he's going to get a commission later on. He's going to recruit. I found a recruiting notice. I found a recruiting notice right here of him in 1863 in March, right before this battle that he fights in. And this is him right here. And here he's in Company F as a first lieutenant. But this is in the Waukegan newspaper where he's actually, so it's really great. We can, look at these things. Then he goes out of the service and gets a commission as lieutenant colonel of the 146th Illinois Infantry Regiment. These are all images, by the way, that come from the collection that his family donated to the National Civil War Museum. So this all came in in an attack, a complete collection that's there. When Lincoln is assassinated, his unit, which was raised for 1 year in the war, I'm not doing very good here today. His unit, which is raised for 1 year during the American Civil War, is training at Camp Butler in Springfield, Illinois. So when Lincoln's assassinated and his body is taken by railroad train and moved toward Chicago and then to Springfield, the 146th Illinois, his regiment is the regiment that is in Springfield. So guess which regiment guards Lincoln's body? Guess which regiment is in the honor guard? It's the 146th Illinois. This is his own personal copy of the program for the reception of Lincoln's body at Springfield, Illinois, that has all of the order of march and where they're going to take the body over to the Springfield Capitol where it's going to lay in state. And his soldiers from the 146th Illinois Infantry Regiment are going to be the ones that are going to be taking care of Lincoln's body while it's there. Now, let me see if I can find one of the last pages in his manuscript that he writes. He describes his work there. And this is what he says. The 146th Regiment in its band of 14 pieces, composed mostly of men from my company, led the procession of Lincoln's funeral. And I had the honor of commanding the watchers who stood around the coffin from 10 until 2 o'clock that night at Springfield. I can never forget the long watches of the night. Excursions. We ran all the roads coming into Springfield, and he mentions that people would pass the coffin. And he goes on to say that I stood beside the head and often had to keep old ladies and men from falling into the coffin and insisting upon kissing the remains. Pushing them back gently, I had to motion them to move on and make room for others to still come. This is an unpublished account of Lincoln's body at Springfield, Illinois. No one has ever seen that. I'm reading it to you for the first time. We'd love to have these things transcribed. If we get time, one of our volunteers did transcribe it, but get it scanned and get it on the internet. We have many things we would love to do that. It's not because we don't want to do it. It's because just the sheer amount of volume like the National Archives has. But this is an Illinois soldier from Waukegan that actually guards Lincoln's body. Now, when the Civil War is over, this man, look at this. This is his troopers guarding the vault that Lincoln's body is in, right there. That's the vault that Lincoln's body in, and that is a carte de visite from his own personal collection. When the Civil War is over, this man, who gets married and stays in Waukegan, becomes a cabinet maker. Later on, he becomes an assessor, and he represents a number of different clients. And he and his wife, this is a beautiful picture from his own collection of his wife, who he married right after the American Civil War. They decide on December 30th, 1903, to take a train from Waukegan down to Chicago and take in a matinee performance at a brand new theater there. And that theater was called the Iroquois Theater. All right? Now, by that, your reaction, you know what happened at the Iroquois Theater. He and his wife go into Iroquois Theater, and they are 2 of the 600 people that die in the largest theater fire in the United States. This is a guy who survived Shiloh, survives Chickamauga. He guards Lincoln's body, and he dies in the theater here. His body is taken right here to the Rolston morgue. This is people outside right at the New Year's Day. And here is a section out of the newspaper on the 1st that says the body of Colonel Reid was found in the morgue early this morning by G.R. Lyon, his old comrade, through papers in his clothes, his face being unrecognizable. His wife's body, they thought she was wearing a certain ring. Come to find out she was not wearing a ring. Took many extra days to actually be identified. And her body was identified from clothing that she actually wore. To add injury to insult to injury, now here he is buried. He got placed to rest up in Oakwood Cemetery in Waukegan, and Rebecca and I were just there on Wednesday. To add insult, a $1,000 note was stolen off his body by somebody. Took the note and tried to cash it in. And then later on, they brought this person up on charges for doing that. William Reid of the 146th Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment, the guard of Lincoln's body, an escort of Lincoln's body, survivor of the Battle of Shiloh from Waukegan, Illinois, and dying in the Iroquois fire. What a tremendous story. And how many artifacts have I shown you here? I can count them on my hand. And the Civil War Museum has 35,000. Imagine the stories I could tell you if we were here. We're not going to give you any more, but we could come back and give you many, many others related to just about any place you want. I love stories. I love telling stories, and I love artifacts. Preservation, ladies and gentlemen, comes in many forms. There's not a person here that wouldn't admit, I know Mary and her work for American Battlefield Trust, Gary Edelman is a better promoter than Wayne Motts. He's better at it than Wayne Motts. And I admire all the great work that the Trust has done. I think preservation is a three-legged stool. I don't think anybody here would say that we shouldn't preserve battlefields. Everybody here knows we should. And there isn't anybody in this room that said we shouldn't preserve structures. Lee's headquarters would be an excellent example. There's nobody in this room that wants Ford's Theater to be a Target store. There's nobody in this room that wants that. And then third, we've got this leg that we bring in for preservation, which are the last tangible treasures of the American Civil War. The things we can hold that Civil War veterans held, the things they used every day. How do you know what land to preserve if you don't have a diary to tell you that? That's in a collection somewhere. All of this is important work, which means we all want your money, everybody. That's what it means. And if more than 3 people are in a room, you fundraise, right? So I just want to say that I know all of you have been great supporters of this. There are many great causes out there to support. They're all great. All of them. And without you, this stuff doesn't get preserved. It doesn't happen that we can tell these stories. So continue all your great work here that you do. And I'm honored that the Roundtable chose me as the Nevins-Freeman Award. It meant an awful lot to me as a kid, hearing the presentations by these folks that are on the same list where my name is now going to go. So I'm very, very honored for that. I'd be happy to take any questions, and thank you for your time. All right. And we do. Okay. All right. Pretty good. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Why was there such a long gap between the Civil War and the presentation of those Medals of Honor? Because a lot of them would have died in the intervening time.
Well, first of all, the presentation of the Medal of Honor at the time it was different than it is now. So many of the recipients today are recipients that their families received the medals posthumously. In the Civil War, they did not do that. They just didn't do that. So if you were, let's say you did an action at Gettysburg, okay? And you could be put in for a medal, and if you were killed in the wilderness, you could still get a medal. But they didn't even put your name in for an action that you did to decorate you if you were killed during that action. Okay, does that make any sense? The first time that the government decides not to do that is in 2014 when President Obama awards Cushing's Medal of Honor. Alonzo Cushing is awarded a Medal of Honor being killed in action at Gettysburg, and it is a retro presentation. That did not happen in the Civil War. That changes all the precedent for the Medal of Honor, basically. Not saying Cushing's not deserving of it, I'm just telling you what the precedent of it is. Now, in this period of time, in the 1890s, you could also put yourself in for the Medal of Honor. So you could write and have affidavits put in. James Vernay's Medal of Honor file, I had it copied. I looked at it 10 years ago, and I couldn't figure out. I found a notation when I was doing this where I went down to the National Archives and I looked 10 years ago of James Vernay's Medal of Honor file, but I didn't have a copy of it. So a friend of mine runs a service that copies those records. So I called him on the phone. I said, I want you to go down there and I want James Vernay's pension record, I want his military service record, and I want his Medal of Honor file that details his Medal of Honor. He said, he told me, and I got it this past week, he told me it was the longest Medal of Honor file he's ever photographed at 700 pages. Medal of Honor file for James Vernay was 700 pages. And it had all of these. And one of the reasons why, which I didn't tell you, is that Vernay actually got a commission in the regular army right after the war, stayed as an officer in the regular army, and was dismissed in service for misuse of funds. Now, it looks like he's probably not guilty of embezzling money, but it looks like he moved some things around, and he tried to get reinstated and never got reinstated back into service. But his Medal of Honor held. he got a presentation for that. So that's a long answer to that question, but that the basic reason why is because it changes how the Medal of Honor actually is. All right, yes, sir.
So what did Vernay do exactly to earn the Medal of Honor?
His actual citation is gallantry while serving on board the Horizon. So they don't really tell us. He took command apparently when somebody had been wounded and done some things. It doesn't really say exactly all the things that are in there. At least not in my reading of his 700-page file, but I didn't get through all 700 pages. It's another book to go out. But it's gallantry. The citation's for gallantry while serving on board the Horizon. Yeah.
Well, you know, I would imagine you've been asked this question a few times, but is there an artifact at your museum that's kind of near and dear to you? Something maybe from Columbia, something maybe anything that kind of stands, I mean, that's maybe not a fair question either, but is there something that really stands out to you at the museum?
Yeah, it might be. Gary Edelman and I probably have the same favorite artifact at National Civil War Museum because we took it out for an American Battlefield Trust video onto the battlefield. We actually have a tactical manual that belonged to a young officer named Fuller, Henry Fuller, and he was in the 64th New York, and he was killed at the Battle of Gettysburg fighting around the wheat field. And this tactical manual we have in the Civil War Museum was in his pocket when a rifle bullet struck him in the back and came out of his breast, and there's blood over the pages. The blood went down the pages. So bar none, it's and boy, that's hard to say which one's your favorite because we've got so many great artifacts in the museum. In the last 60 days, the National Civil War Museum received 2 Medals of Honor as a donation. In 60 days. I came in the office on February 9, and there was a package that said Wayne Motts, CO National Civil War Museum, $9.20. And I opened this thing up. I thought it was a book, I'm opening it up, and there's a note in there in an original Medal of Honor. It says, we're donating this to the National Civil War Museum. No insurance, no, just showed up, mailed. There it is, right there. And this medal came from a soldier that got it at Petersburg. And what's interesting about it is he died up in Vermont and got interred in Arlington. His daughter, after he was dead, many years, wanted his body interred at Arlington. And so when we got this medal, I'm looking at it and I said, this medal is modern. This is a modern medal. Could this thing, and then I turn it over and it's got for action at Petersburg, and Petersburg is spelled incorrectly. So I'm looking at this saying, So I sent it to the curators at the National Medal of Honor Museum down in Arlington, Texas. And I said, look, here's the circumstances we got. Here it is, what it is. His body in like 1954 is down in Arlington. And so the curator said, look, Wayne, that's real. He said, that's the worst inscription I've ever seen on a medal. But apparently it was a medal that the government issued to his daughter when his body was reinterred down at Arlington. So he didn't wear this medal that we have, but it is an original Congressional Medal of Honor. And then we got another one just a couple days ago, about 2-3 days ago, from a soldier that was in the 77th Illinois Infantry Regiment and got it at Vicksburg for the attack on May 22nd. And I had his Medal of Honor file pulled. I had everything pulled. It's the 1896 design Medal of Honor that you saw. And where did this soldier die? He died in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the soldier's home. And I just went to his grave yesterday. Rebecca and I both did. So he was right there. I told the people at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, Rebecca and I had a tour, and the first thing the lady says is, can we have it? I said, no. I said, I'm happy to let you put it on loan. We'll loan it to you, but you can't have it. But he's buried. He's one of like the 6 or 7 Medal of Honor recipients buried in the Wood National Cemetery in Milwaukee. And we got those just in the last 60 days. Every day is Christmas. Every day you're sitting around. So it's just wonderful that we are able to preserve those, and every one of them has a story. All right, I'm sorry. I took over a lot of time. Sorry about that, Bruce. Get excited. Okay.